Hello, fellow ink drinkers, and welcome back to the Blind Girls Book Talk podcast. My name is Aria.
And I'm Belle.
And we are two legally blind sisters who love reading and love books. And so what we've done is we've created this show in order to talk about that. We talk about a wide variety of bookish topics, and that can range from bad retellings of stories, book to movie adaptation comparisons, buddy reads, recent reads, bookish challenges. Really, the list does go on and on. And today we started out with a plan of what we were going to record. And then Belle came in and said, Yo, I want to talk about this thing. And so...
Oh, okay. Hold on. No. I came in and said, Aria, I found this thing. We should talk about it.
That is pretty much exactly what I just...
No, I didn't. No. I said we should talk about it. As in, like, we could talk about it later. And then I dragged you down my rabbit hole. And then you were like, yeah, we're doing this. And I said, okay.
Rewriting history, but all right. We'll allow it. So anyway, since this is your rabbit hole, what are we talking about?
Okay, so preface this. This is what happens when Belle can't fall asleep. And it's 3 a.m.
Okay.
So I was like, you know what? I haven't looked on YouTube for any book related stuff recently. So I'm just going to type in BookTube and see what comes up. And I looked, I found some stuff. I saved it to watch later. And then I was like, oh, just for funsies. Because I sometimes like to watch the Book Tok compilations. I type in Book Tok into YouTube's search bar. That was the first mistake I made. The second mistake was scrolling. Because, as people know, I think this will officially be our third episode talking about Book Tok, nonsensical nonsense, a Book Tok and people critiquing and everything else. I believe our newest one before this was talking about overconsumption.
Yeah, I don't remember what episode that was.
I don't remember what episode that was, but I do know we talked about that. And, I liked that critique. And I liked talking about that. And I saw I saw a couple talking about Book Tok and the rise of anti-intellectualism because of it.
Okay.
And so I saved them for later. And then the next day I'm like, oh, I'm getting ready to go study evidence. I'm gonna put this on while I get ready, just to listen to it. Yeah, that was a mistake. That was mistake number 10. Because I got so mad at what was being said, I had to talk to Aria about it. Because of how much I disagreed with what was being said. To an extent. Let me preface this. To an extent. I then dragged Aria down this rabbit hole, and we have watched a couple of videos and everything.
Aria's brain is broken.
Yeah, I broke Aria. We tried to actually record this last night of the day we're recording. The night before we tried to sit down and record. I broke Aria so much that she couldn't handle it.
Yeah, that intro to that episode, because we did not get past the intro to that episode. And it's already deleted. It's gone because...
It was bad. I was already exhausted from studying evidence. Don't go into law school. Belle's PSA for the day. Don't do it. Midterms are horrible. So, I was already, my brain was already fried in a different way and tired and fed up with life. And I broke Aria. It was a mess.
Yes.
Then Aria was like, oh, because I mentioned to Aria, oh, I have some other videos saved. Aria that night was like, send them to me.
Uh-huh.
I did.
Uh-huh.
That was mistake number 50. So I sent it to her and I was like, oh, did you watch it? Yeah, you need to watch it.
We're up to mistake 100.
Yeah, at this point, we're up to mistake 100. Because then I had to sit down and watch it. And oh boy, First off, this is no shame on any of the creators.
This is
I appreciate their thoughts. I would like to throw my hat into the ring.
Yes, this is no shade, hate, anything on any creator that we mention in this video, because we are also going to be linking their videos in the description or the caption so you know where we're getting our information from.
Yes, there's even one that I have watched for years at this point. And, like, she's not one. We'll get to her later into the video. But I love her stuff. I absolutely love her, and I love what she said. And would love to be friends with this human because I think she is amazing. But no shade to any of the others or anything we say about her. It's literally just us being able to put our thoughts to what they said because we have a different outlook.
Yes, and we are having a conversation here. We are not attacking anybody. We are not, like, we're not anything like that. We are talking about what they kind of said in their videos and then our viewpoints on it. We are not coming from a place of
malice or anything like
that. We may get heated.
Yes, we may get heated, but we will explain because the viewpoints we have come from a different background
than probably what a lot of these people have. And that's okay. That's what makes life very interesting. We're all different, and that's okay.
And that's okay. But this is not meant as a attack or anything else. Because we did sit there and we did say everybody had good points.
Yes, it's just some of them missed the mark by a long shot.
Yes, a long shot was had, and we wanted to talk about it because we started talking about it. And if anybody remembers how this podcast was started, it all started with a 4-hour phone call about the Raven.
Yeah, so when Arya and Belle get talking, you know.
Yeah, like this was coming. It was just a matter of time, and I just hijacked this, so apparently it's now.
Apparently this is our lives now.
And Belle learned a very important lesson.
Well, and also, too, you may have a different opinion than we do.
And that is totally fine.
And that is fine and valid. We are open
for any discussion if you want to leave a comment.
Respectful discussion.
We want respectful discussion. We are not coming for your opinion. Please do not come for ours.
Yes, we believe everyone is allowed to have their own opinions because everybody has their own backgrounds. Everybody is a little bit different than what we are. And that's amazing. And that's awesome.
Yes. Like even our best friends would probably disagree with us
on some of this. But
they have their own lives and we're not dragging them into this.
Correct. And we are not trying to spread any sort of hate, ill intent,
any like cancel. We're not doing that.
No, we're not here for that.
This is us to just be able to take what they said and to provide a new insight. Because again, as me and Ari have stated before on here, we come from a very different background.
Yes.
And we want to be able to show others that, like, part of what you say comes from your background, but don't drag down the whole collective literary field because of it, so to speak.
Yeah.
If I'm wording this correctly.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. And again, we are open to discussion, but again,
what we say is not end all be all, everyone.
Yeah,
we are two sisters who have a very little stake in all of this.
Yes, we're here to give our opinions. Like that's what we're here for. That's what we want to do, and we think it could be entertaining to you, at the very least. And if at the most, it will give you something to just think about when you see all these other videos or hear these other things. Like, yes, there are valid points to all, And the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle of all of it. And that's okay.
Yes.
So, kick it off.
Oh boy. Which video do we want to start with?
Let's go through the order.
The video that started this all, that started us down this lovely little rabbit hole, is titled On Book Tok, Anti-Intellectualism and Why It's Okay to Criticize Books. I'm not going to say the person's name because I am a dyslexic individual.
So her username on here, or her channel name, is Raya, Raya. That video did deal with a Book Tok creator. I believe the creator's name herself is Celine.
Yeah.
But I believe the handle was like Bookish with HB. I do not remember this exactly. This is the furthest we got last night.
This is the furthest we've got.
When we recorded last night. So I think that's the name that I remember. But again, we are going to link this original video that we are citing in the description. So that way you can go watch it should you choose to do so. And you want another viewpoint. So what made you mad about it? Like, what started it all?
Oh, goodness. Well, okay. I'm trying to remember this one because now my brain is focused on the other one.
I know.
And so, like, I'm struggling. So it started with the one TikTok that she references in the start of the thing was talking about how pretty much the world of Book Tok and everything is, for lack of better words, kind of ruining reading by taking years' worth of authors' works and putting it into tropes.
Mm-hmm.
And recommending based on tropes instead of whether or not the book is good or bad or whatever.
Right.
And again, me and Arya talked about this, and my whole point is, what the heck? Like, why are you so fixated on this? And her main thing was a book I haven't read. I believe the TikToker mentions the Poppy Wars
yes.
or something like that. I don't exactly remember it. I have not read it. And it was, she was like, they completely ignored like the whole emotional stuff that is tied with the book and just reduced it to tropes and how that is like a horrible thing to do and XYZ. And my whole argument on that, and again, this is stemming from me, is for me, tropes are very useful because I don't like to read something with something I know I'm going to dislike. Like I literally said to Arya about like 20 minutes before we started recording that for me, as we've talked about in our tropes video, whatever that video is, I don't remember, and I ain't looking it up. Just scroll and you'll find it. I mentioned how I absolutely despise damsel in distress. Like, yes. Absolutely cannot handle it. Like, it is the bane of my existence. So I like being able to look at a Book Tok or anything and see if it has that trope, because then I know not to waste my time or money on this book. Not saying that the book itself is bad.
Right.
It is just, it isn't for me.
Right. Yes. And see, this is where because I'm trying to remember, I know the video mentions the TikTok a lot and like goes over just kind of playing that TikTok a lot. And I think that the actual YouTube creators' views on it were kind of similar to ours in a way.
Yes.
Because the thing is that is it sad that we have to heavily rely on tropes for things to like figure out like, if this book is something we want to read or whatever? Yes, it is. However, we as humans want to categorize things. That's what our brain is hardwired to do. So the fact that we are just breaking down books just into their tropes, it's not surprising to me because we are hardwired to be like, this is good, this is bad. This is this is this is this. that's what we do as people. So if you really truly want to get away from tropes, then you have to fundamentally change how you think.
Yes.
And maybe that is something that as a community, as a culture, as, you know, society at large, maybe that is something that we need to do.
And let us also preface this. We are talking in preference to the United States.
Correct. Yes.
We are talking, when we reference culture, we are talking about the culture of the United States.
Correct. Yes. Not overseas. Maybe that is something that we need to do, but I think that doing that is going to it is going to force everybody to do a lot of thinking, a lot more thinking than people from the US are wont to do, unfortunately. Not saying everybody.
No, yes, not saying everybody.
It is not everybody. There's still, I think, a fair percentage of the population that will, you know, try to think through things. But also there is a large percentage of the population who will not. And again, that's, you know, that's just how it is. And like, we accept that, we recognize that, and there is nothing that we can do to change that other than put out episodes like this where we challenge people to think a little bit differently than how they would normally.
Yes.
But I think that too, tropes can be very important. Like, yes, they can be a little like demeaning about some things. Because I think the one example that was used in the video was that one book in a 4-book series had the one bed trope. But the person who was recommending that series said, you know, oh, for this whole series, the one bed trope is very prominent, when it's only prominent in one book. And I think that, is that necessarily fair to the whole series? No, because it's only in one book. But I think a better way to approach something like that would be like, hey, in book 1, here are the tropes. You know, it's this, and this. And then if you really like book 1, you're sure going to like the next book where it has this, and this. And that's how I think I normally see people talk about books. But again, we do not have Book Talk. We have Bookstagram.
Which is very similar in a way.
And honestly, I've not been posting on there because it's so depressing. Bookstagram is not in a good state right now.
I haven't even opened it, so I don't even know what's happening.
It's bad. It's really bad. Because
I have the couple people that I follow on like my personal Instagram, but it's because I like their pictures.
Yeah.
Their pictures are pretty and they make me feel happy.
Yeah. Whereas, like, anytime I had tried to post anything, it was not good. In fact, no bueno. I understand the argument. I really do.
Yes, I understand the argument and, like, it makes sense. But, like, at the same time, and Ari and I have also talked about this, there is an author who I do follow on my personal Instagram who I saw posted on her story that, you know, she was really struggling because people kept tagging her in bad reviews of her book.
Yeah.
And she is a younger author, a younger indie author. And, like, it hurt to see that. To have to read that of her being like, you know, I'm really struggling because of this. Like, I don't.
Well, that ties. We're going to go to the next one.
We're going to go to the next one. We really got stuff to say on.
Because this is the one that we have many thoughts on. And so the title is Book Talk, Brain Rot, and Why It's Okay to Be a Hater. And it's from Alicia, not Alicia. I'm sorry if I got that name wrong of the channel.
Now, I
thought that was going to be a pretty interesting video. The title sounds good because it does make a thing that I thought by reading that. I'm like, oh, it's okay to dislike some of the popular things. Like in talking about that. Again, my thought was going to be like, it's okay to dislike. Everybody has their own opinion, that type of thing. That is not what this video was.
That is not what this video was. This video was one in which she kind of went off about how criticism is extremely important. It then got very political and very anti-capitalism in a way, which we are not going to touch that aspect of it.
I ain't touching that.
Because that is not what we're here for.
Nope.
And it also kind of said things about how essentially because book talk is prevalent and like these, she called them popcorn books, are prevalent, it's changing the publishing industry. And if we're not careful, we're going to lose all the good books. And what was the other thing she said?
I forget. I had my own gripes with this.
You had different gripes than
I had different gripes.
So, okay. The thing about it is that the first thing that she was talking about was the criticism and the critique. Do I think that criticism is important? Yes. Oh, that's what it was. You must critically read all the time.
Yes, it was that.
That's what it was. That was her other point. If you are reading, you should constantly be reading critically. Now, we'll go back to the criticism.
Yeah, let's start there.
She said that criticism is extremely important, that, she will explain full-heartedly why she thinks a book isn't good, like essentially page-long review for a book that she might give like 1, 2, or 3 stars to.
But if she gives it a higher rating, it's only 1 or 2 sentences.
Right. Or even a word.
Yes.
Do I think that it is important to have criticism for art? Yes. Do I think that it is important to have differing opinions about things? Yes. However, she was saying that having criticism is great, but there are certain types of criticism that aren't good. And but if you have this other type of criticism, you're doing it right, essentially. That's not her words, but paraphrasing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the thing that she seems to forget is that the criticisms that she says aren't the good ones, which is criticism coming from a hateful place, are the criticisms that a lot of people do. Because a lot of people do not know how to criticize a book without attacking something.
Yes, that is a very big cultural thing. And again, for us, we try, even when we are not a fan of something that we talk about on this channel, i.e. our Addie LaRue episode, we both did not enjoy that book.
Yeah.
Aria is the only one who finished the book.
Yes.
And that's okay. We explained what it was for us that wasn't
our favorite. I mean, even there, and granted, I try to be mindful because I do, again, as we've said plenty of times before, and even earlier in this episode, we recognize that this book that we are holding in our hands takes years for a person to do.
Yes.
It took them so long to accomplish this thing.
Yes.
And just because it isn't for us or it isn't something that we like doesn't mean that we have the right to just be like, this is terrible. Because we recognize that, even if it wasn't for us, they worked so hard on that.
Yeah. We recognize that. But we also, again, have said, check Harry Potter episodes, that once an author puts something out into the world, yes, it is theirs, but it then becomes ours.
Yes, it is now shared between the reader and the author. Now, there's only one book that I know of in recent history that I absolutely despised, and I know I talked about it. And even then, where I was just like, I cannot stand this book. I am so angry about this book. I made it very clear, or I hope I did, I'm pretty sure I did, that I am not going after the author in any way. I just recognize that there are a lot of things in that book that aren't for me.
Yes. And again, it's all human perception and all differences of opinion. For example, for me, I could not continue reading Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I wanted to. Like, I was really excited to read the book. I think the premise of it was so cool, but I couldn't get over the writing style.
Yeah.
And that is nothing against the author. That is nothing against the author. Because for me, since high school, I learned I write in Old English. My writing style is completely writing in Old English. And I had many a professor comment on it. And like, this is so cool that you're able to emulate this. But I also had a professor in college who absolutely despised it.
Yeah.
And like came for me with each written assignment that I turned in. And now in law school, it is you got to knock that out. Like that can't happen. Like, no, try again.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't do it. And, it's something I struggle with because for me, Old English makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been able to understand how everybody in high school and everything reading classics, they're like, it's so difficult. I never had that issue.
Yeah.
Because I'm able to pick that up and just emulate it. But, that's me. I know my style isn't for everyone.
Right.
I know that because it's Old English, it can be confusing. And like, yeah, well, I admit, did I get frustrated when I got knocked down on grade points? Yes. But at the same point in time, I understand, I understand. And, if I were to write a book, I would understand that style is not for everyone.
Right. And so to then have how Belle had said about the young indie author who, doesn't know if she's going to be able to write anymore because of all of these terrible reviews. Yes, it's okay to have criticisms. No, it is not okay to tag the author in negative criticisms. Like, we are back when we did a lot more on Bookstagram. If we didn't have something nice to say, we did not tag that author.
Nope.
The only time the author was tagged is if I had good things to say, or if like I was just mentioning like, hey, I read this book. Because we don't do a lot of reviews.
No, we do not.
We don't, because we realize that what we might think of a book is subjective. You might read the same thing and absolutely not like it. So we try not to like do a whole lot with that because of just how that is. And we don't want to unduly criticize something when, it's easier to just be like, hey, that wasn't for me. Like, it might be for you, but it's just not for me. And that's okay.
A case in point, take Arya's opinion on Fourth Wing.
Yeah. Take Fourth Wing. Or take the fact that I DNF'd Icebreaker. Like, two very popular Book Talk books that weren't for me. And that's okay. I'm not going to go and attack the authors because I don't like the books. I'm not going to attack anybody else who loves the books and say, well, you're wrong for liking them, because especially for Fourth Wing, I realize that there are some aspects of that book that a lot of people will resonate with. It just did not resonate with me, and that's okay. It's okay to have those differing opinions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to the reading critically.
Oh boy, here we go.
Here we go. So, okay. In the video, she was kind of saying that reading is a very intellectual thing, and so therefore you must always, you must read critically, and if you do not read critically, you are not giving things enough credit, I think, is kind of the easy way to put what she said.
Yeah, for lack of better words, yes. Again, we're going off this by memory. We do not take notes.
No, we don't.
We should learn our lesson.
I think we would, but
we don't.
Well, we don't. And that's why, again, this is going to be linked because we want you to know where we're getting this from. And so that way you can then form your own opinion on it. And the thing is, I think that's complete and total crap.
Yes.
I was going to curse, but we don't curse on this show.
We do not. We are very friendly.
We are very family friendly here on this show. But no, I do not think that you have to read critically in order to read. And I think that saying that comes from a not good place. I think that that's very black and white thinking that she, in her video, to me anyway, seemed like she was trying not to be black and white thinking. Like, oh, well, this, and this. And it's like, no, hun, like you are very much in a very different place.
Yeah, we're going to come back to this. This leads into another avenue of talking about like elitism.
Yes.
In reading.
Yes.
And, the whole stemming from it. And in the video, she also talked about buying, all the different pretty covers of things and everything else. I paused the video and made the comment to Arya of, because I pick up a book because it catches my eye. Not, again, the whole not judging books by its cover thing thrown out. We ain't getting into that. But if I pick up a book because I think, oh, this is a really pretty cover, the sprayed edges or something, very pretty, open it up, read the inside, and I'm like, oh, this seems that it would interest me. I picked it up because I thought, oh, this is interesting. Like the cover, like it caught my eye. I was attracted to it. And then to read like the synopsis, to get some of the substance, it spoke to me. And there's a series that I started getting because of that. And I haven't had time to read the first book, but don't come for me. My money. She did make the comment of like elitism and, buying multiple copies and having to buy the pretty copies and everything. To which case, I will reference this. I can't think of the name of the video, but it's by Ruby Granger. I love her. I have, again, as I said, I watched her for years and everything, and she did a video about the history of book aesthetics. And she brought up how book buying used to be, and you used to just buy the pages and you'd have to take it to a bookbinder, and you got to pick what your book looked like. And nowadays you don't have that. But it used to be, because of that, books were a very elite thing.
Yes.
Now they are more readily accessible. So, it isn't that elite of a thing. Most people can read. However, with the critical thinking, it makes it into some elite thing that you have to be able to do this a certain way and you have to come up with these conclusions.
Yes.
Which is where I was going into the thinking critically.
Okay.
And tying elitism.
So yeah, no, and that's just it. If you want to sit there and think critically about every single book that you read, fine. I'm not going to stop you from doing that. If you want to sit there and you want to read a book and you just want to enjoy the story, do that. I do not think you have to read critically, because reading is entertainment as well. Is it a higher form of entertainment, maybe? Probably.
There's the argument.
There is the argument that it is. However, it is still entertainment. The other thing, too, is, because this girl was all over the place in a lot of different ways. And that's why it's very hard to like follow a thread, because she had 5 different threads going from one thing, and all of them make very different points.
Yes.
Some are valid and some I don't agree with.
There was one point coming from this about people just buying things based on tropes because of certain outcomes, that everything's predictable. Me and Ari have talked about this for years, and there were times we really struggled with this because we could figure out the ending of a book.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, you know, I stopped many series. I believe I said this on this podcast before, of, like, the Selection series. I figured out how it was going to end.
Yeah.
And I double-checked that I was right, and I said, okay, it doesn't matter what happened in the middle. I've gotten a lot better at handling that and being able to be like, you know what? The middle still matters. I drove Arya crazy the other week because I had a really bad week, and I needed something happy. I needed something with the correct ending. Like, it didn't matter how, but I needed that correct ending. So I was going through my books and reading to find that correct ending that I needed. And then I read the book. Drove her mad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I needed that. And my argument is, for me, again, I don't read for the intellectual blah, blah, blah. I read for the entertainment and the escapism.
Yeah.
My world is tough enough. I have the whole disability thing. Yeah, guess what? That's hard.
Yeah.
Day-to-day life is difficult. And to top it all off, I'm also a law student. I spend my days reading and discussing cases of people experiencing some of the worst times of their lives. And, you know, right now I'm even reading worst cases because I'm in criminal law. And I have to sit there every day and read and discuss these things. So, you know, I come home and I don't want to have to pick up a book that could take me down that road also. To read something critically like that and to not be able to get an ending that is satisfying.
Well, and the thing is, too, is that she also said something about reading will expand, like, your empathy and all of these other, like, aspects and blah, blah, blah. Yes, you are correct. It will do that. I agree. But the thing is, you don't have to read critically to get that. If you have to read critically to get that, then something's getting lost in translation. Because the thing about it is that I'm going to use the Hunger Games for an example. I read the Hunger Games back when it came out, and I loved it because I was in the ideal demographic. There is a lot of social commentary in that book. Say what you will about it, but there's a lot of social commentary in that book. And I was able to see that. I wasn't reading critically. I was just reading the story. But I was able to kind of see what that was, and I was able to internalize it. And then I was able to kind of say, like, look out and be like, yeah, this is kind of analogous to the real world right now. And it's even more so today. I didn't have to read critically to do that. You don't have to read critically all the time to get lessons from books. And to say that you do is a disservice to readers, in my opinion. You are allowed to have a different one. This is mine. I think that a lot of times people forget that at the end of the day, reading should be fun. Like, it really should be. Because, again, looking back through history, yes, reading was a way to gain knowledge, but, like, starting to look at, like, let's say, like, the Regency era, where you had books like, well, Austen's works, but also you had Dickens, and you started having some of
Regency. Dickens isn't Regency.
Okay, I'm not good at the history at this moment in time, but I'm just trying to say, you had these books that made this...
Monk was Regency.
You had these books that made these commentaries, regardless of what the lesson was, what the message was, they made these commentaries. And people didn't have to necessarily read critically in order to understand those.
Correct.
Do you get more information out of it if you read critically? Yes. I'm not going to say no, because it's true. But you don't have to sit there and think about it the whole way through to get every last drop of this out of a book, because you don't. You don't have to. It can just be, I just want to enjoy the story. I just want to have a good time reading about two people who faked a relationship and now they fall in love.
Yeah, or, like for me, it's my biggest gripe, and Arya can attest. I always get very frustrated when everyone's like, oh, Jane Austen is only romance. No, she's really social commentary.
Yes.
If you read it, you'll be able to pick up on that, because like the social commentary is still relevant today, such as Pride and Prejudice and First Impressions, or take Northanger Abbey and the idea of childhood innocence and naivety. It is something that anybody can read and pick out. You don't have to sit there and dig down deep. Heck, you can even pick up Fahrenheit 451 and read it and just marvel at the fact that Ray Bradbury sat there and wrote things down and was able to come up with modern technology in that book.
And also, there are a lot of key messages in that book that you don't have to critically think to get. I think that's where I struggle, because just the fact of reading through, like, just the fact of reading, of taking in the words and like letting them kind of sit with you. And like, it's kind of like through osmosis that you will get certain lessons. Now, in the case of Book Talk books, do I think there's many lessons to be learned there? Probably not. But the one thing that can always be said for any book is the empathy, the gaining of empathy, and the gaining of understanding from different perspectives. That can always be said from books. And again, you don't have to go real deep to get that. If you want to do that, great, fantastic, do that. Have fun, have a ball. But you don't have to. And the fact that there are people out there who are like, yes, you must read critically in order to get all the...
You are why people don't like reading.
Yeah, you're missing the plot, my friend. I'm sorry to tell you, but you're missing something. Because thinking critically in the way that you say it should happen is the reason why so many people at a young age are turned off from reading. And that is sad, because I think a lot of people would enjoy reading were they given the chance to just
absorb the information.
It. Yeah, absorb it and sit with it. Because take something like Harry Potter or Percy Jackson. Are they more fantasy stories? Yes. Do they teach a lot of different things, even though they are kid stories? Yes. Yes, they do. There are so many lessons in these series for kids. Not young adult kids, but like younger than young adult kids. Middle age, I think they call it. Yeah, middle grade. That's what they call it. That they would not get if they had to sit there and break it apart bit by bit by bit. Could they do that? Yes, they could. And maybe when they're adult and they have better handle on those skills, yeah, they should go back and read that and understand some things differently. But having the expectation that, like, from a young age, you have to be taught how to read critically, and that's the only way to read, is kind of messed up, in my opinion, because reading can be very fun. No one who is on the reading should only be a critical thing train wants to understand that. Is critical reading important? Yes. But it's also important to chase the fun, I think.
And I agree. For example, for me, again, go to earlier episodes or who knows what other episodes I've said. It has been said many times. I wasn't always a reader.
Yeah.
It is why I had us do a how anybody can become a reader thing, because it's true. For the longest time, I never wanted to pick up a book.
Yeah.
Until 4th grade, where I got my hands on the Book of Elsewhere. And, if our mother would have sat there and read it with me and was like, you have to think about this critically, I would have never picked up another book again.
Yeah.
But we read it for the story.
Yes.
For the words on the page that created something. And not to sit there and be like, oh, what does this mean? Or whenever I, read another book, like, yeah, can I read critically now? Yes. And do I probably slightly read critically whenever I read a book now? Yeah, but I'm not sitting there digesting everything. Like, why are the curtains blue?
Yeah. I think there's a middle ground here. I really do. Between the let people read what they want to read and have fun and the reading critically. I think there's a middle ground. The truth lies somewhere in the middle. Our perspective sure as heck isn't the right one, necessarily. The ones that are kind of on the opposite end of where we are, I don't think they're the right one either. The truth is in the middle. And at the end of the day, you should be able to do whatever it is you want. Read however you want. Because reading is good for you. Reading is good for the soul. It's good for the brain. It's good for all of them. And to have people just kind of, in a way, putting that down, even though that might not be their intention, because I do think that the girl whose video we're talking about now is a very avid reader. I do think she loves reading. But I think that she's so far lost in the weeds that she's not realizing that both are okay. One isn't right over the other. It's not all or nothing. It's both. You need both. Critical reading has its place. Reading for fun has its place. And maybe to be the best, well-rounded individual out there, you need to be able to do both. You have to have a little bit of critical while you're reading for fun.
Yeah. The other thing I know, this was another point I stopped on, was she brought up the quote that was going around, and it's the, I drink tea, I read books, and I know things.
Oh, yeah. I forget what she was saying. Because it was a bigger quote within that.
Within that, yes. But she was kind of saying on how, almost to the point of like read and know things almost, so to speak. At least that's what I got what she was trying to say. And to which case, I want to argue that, I mean, I drink tea, I read things for fun. I have, again, it's in another one of these videos somewhere, I don't know which video, but it was brought up that I collect books of random facts.
Yeah.
And, Arya always says, I don't drink tea, read books, and know things. I just know things.
Yeah.
And it's because I have that love for learning. But I know not everyone has that.
Right.
Not everyone has my strange fixation on having to know every little minuscule thing to be able to find when something is wrong and faulty. And, I think for me, it comes from, I had really, really good history teachers who, one of them was absolutely amazing, and he knew more facts than a lot of people.
Yeah.
And, he wasn't making up stories. He had stuff to back it up.
Yeah.
it was just stuff that wasn't well known. And, from then on, I liked being able to know those things. I like being able to have conversations about history, or, for instance, our family likes to go to famous houses. We like to be able to go there and to then be able to talk about it. And we're like, be able to talk to tour guides and be like, well, wait a minute, there's this. What do you have to say on this?
Yeah, there's a way to do things critically without saying that it's an all or nothing thing, because everyone knows I'm not an analysis girly. I'm not a critical reading girly. I'm not. I've never claimed to be. But there are times when I think, I can read something and just be like, hey, this kind of speaks to this thing. And like, I pick up on it. But I don't sit there and be like, but what about blah, 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 blah. It's just kind of like okay, I see you. And then I move on. Because at the end of the day, I love the story.
I think out of the two of us, I'm the more critical.
You are the more critical reader. I am the more, I want to know the story. I want to be able to tell a story.
And I think that's where we kind of ground each other more.
Yes.
Because, again, I am a mix. I can read critically, but read for fun.
Yes.
I think that, that balance is needed.
And, there are times I'll read something and I'll be like, hey, wait a minute, i.e., reading The Raven and being like, wait a minute, what if the Raven isn't real, or whatever I said?
Yeah.
And talk about things like that, because it's a thought.
Yeah. Belle is a lot better at that than I am.
And I don't do it often.
Another point she brought up is highlighting and annotating.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she was going on and saying about how Book Tok has created reading as an aesthetic. And that, according to Book Tok, in order to be like this good reader, you need all the highlighters and the sticky notes and the this and the that and every other little thing. Do I think Book Tok has created reading as an aesthetic? Yes, I do. But also,
It always has been.
It always has been. It's just been put into the consciousness, and it's considered cool now. Because, fully admit, I am the kid that would always have a book. Always.
And I became that kid.
Yes. And I would be sitting at my desk before and after class, and I would be reading instead of socializing. Which, yeah, probably not the most ideal thing looking back, but at the same time, would I go back and change it? Absolutely not. Because reading was important to me. Reading still is important to me, even when I go on 5-year reading slumps. And it's a big part of Belle, too. It grew to that. So
Arya would complain about it.
yes, but only because I had certain rules and you didn't, because they wanted to continue to encourage you to read. They didn't need to encourage me to read. But even looking back, when I was in school, you have to read what you have to read, and you have to read critically. I didn't enjoy that. I think I would have gotten a lot more out of books in school if I didn't have to critically read them. Not saying critical reading isn't important, because it is. But I'm saying that the way that I read, by taking in things and internalizing them, that's a lot different, I think, of a process than it is to critically read. And I'm not saying one's better than the other, but the way that I do it that makes sense to me is not to read critically, it's to internalize it. And so to say that only one way and this is it and that's blah, blah, blah. No, there's more than one way to get a task done.
There is. And for me, I think the difference is I had a really good teacher teaching me critical reading.
Oh, yeah, no. There were only 2 English teachers that I had that I would consider really good. And they were both very tough.
But yeah, I had a really good one. And I remember I found what worked for me, and what worked for me, again, it wasn't exactly what she wanted, and I kind of had to cheat a little bit to get full points on things. But what worked for me is, like, instead of sitting there and finding a theme in every single chapter like she wanted, I would pick out things that stuck out to me. And then at the end of the book, I would look at all my notes and I would look at the story as a whole from what I just read. And I could synthesize a theme from all of that instead of, having to go through everything differently. And that's still how I read today. I like picking out things that stick out to me. Again, I believe it is in another episode, don't ask me which one, but we talked about how, shocking to a lot of people, I don't talk much. And Arya can attest. I am a very private, quiet person, and I like to sit back and listen and watch. And that's why I'm quiet, so when I speak, my words have more meaning. So whenever I read, those words have more meaning to me. Mm-hmm. So I like to be able to sit down and I like to mark what quotes speak out to me. I like to be able to do that because then I use book darts. And, if I don't have those, I do use sticky tabs. So I can easily find that. Or if, for example, in Stalking Jack the Ripper, one of my all-time favorite books, I sat there and I marked lines I liked with sticky notes going one way, and then at the top and bottom of the book, I marked scenes that brought me joy and made me laugh.
Yeah. And we know Arya does not annotate to save.
Gosh, you do not.
To save your soul.
Sad.
I don't, because the thing is again, I internalize the story.
I think that's the difference. We both internalize.
But I think I do it to a far greater extent.
I think you do it to a far greater extent. But again, I think for me, again, the difference is I like to mark quotes.
Yes.
I like to be able to go back. Arya, I gave her a little heart attack a couple weeks ago because I said, I want to take one of my copies of Pride and Prejudice and annotate it.
Yep. And she's like, which one? And she brought me 2, and she's like, okay, I want to do this. Which one do I do it in? And I was just like, none.
Yeah, she is not happy.
None. The answer's none.
And I think that's the difference, is there are things that you like to sit there and stew over the whole story.
Yes.
Yes. Do I sit there and I stew over the whole story? Yes. But I like to go back to certain points.
Yes. You are very much I will go back to certain points. I will take the story as a whole.
Yeah.
And it is rare for me to go back to a story because at that point it's kind of okay, I've taken in that story, I've internalized that. And it's kind of, if it's a story that I guess serves me or does not serve me. And a lot of books I read for fun. I just need a fun little romp where we go fight some dragons and topple a government and, we need that. But there are some, like Night Circus, like The Book Thief, like some of my other favorites, that I will go back to because I love the story. I love the world. Howl's Moving Castle is another one. I've been toying with the idea of a reread for that one, actually, for a little bit.
I am too.
But it's because I take in so many stories, and some of them are just ones that I really want to go back to. A lot of them aren't, and that's okay.
And again, I wasn't always like what I am now. I wasn't for the longest time. I was like Arya. Because I think for me, it was I watched Arya and I was like, oh, this is how you do it. But then I learned that just because that's what Arya does, that isn't what I have to do or be.
Right, exactly. And so I think that's a good way to kind of tie up this episode, unless you have some other thoughts.
I do not.
But just because we're saying this is how we're doing it, just because some other person out there is saying this is how I think that you should be doing it, doesn't mean that you have to do it that way. You can find your own way, and it can be different from everybody else. It can be the same as anybody else. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, It's what's important to you.
It is. It's what's important to you. And as a community, we shouldn't be going after other people who do things a different way.
Criticism is valid, but you can do so in a way where it's just like, hey, I don't agree with that, but also I realize what you're doing isn't hurting anybody but you, so you do you. I wish you the best. I think a lot of people have forgotten that kindness can go a long way.
It really
And
can.
being mindful can go a very long way.
The book community is just that. It is a book community. There are multiple ways that we can all do things, but just because some people don't do it one way is not to say that reading is becoming anti-intellectual and this, that, and the other thing, because it doesn't have to be.
Well, and that's the thing. For the anti-intellectual thing, there's always going to be smart stories out there. Well done stories. They're always going to find their way out there. You just might have to go looking for them. There are a lot of really good indie authors out there.
There are.
And you just have to go looking. Like, it's not going to fall into your lap. And like, she made a comment in the one video about, everybody's just waiting for these things to fall into your lap. Well, hun, that seems like what you're doing by saying that everything is terrible. You're waiting for the good things to just appear. They're not. You have to try them. That's the part of life. Trying new things, trying new books, trying new foods. All of that goes together. So, like, do I think there could be problems as a whole for the state of publishing and, like, only publishing by certain buzzwords? Yes, I do think that is troubling. But until we, as a community, try to band together and say, hey, no, this is not what we want. We need to do this instead. This is what we want instead. Nothing will change. Nothing will.
It doesn't have to be one certain thing. I guess for us, the main point of doing it is to do the other side so people can start to look and think and find the truth in the middle. Like, yes, you can always lean to more one side than the other. Well, like, I feel like for me, I'm a good middle ground in between, but I lean more one way. And again, for us, it's because we come from a place where not everybody wants to read, because we see people lose a light to read because they're forced to do things one way. She brought up banned books. Me and Ari have both read a lot of banned books, for school. And we had to figure out what it actually meant for a book to be banned. And, it's not in a library. And for us, our local library is only open 2 days a week for 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no one who wants to go there to read.
We are providing our thoughts on it. We will also be providing links to these other videos, so that way you can see what we're basing this off of, what maybe the other side or maybe something similar to what we're saying is. But you then have to find your truth. You find what makes sense to you. And again, you can have a completely different opinion than us. That's fine.
That is totally fine. If you want to have a discussion, we're more than open to it as long as it's respectful.
Exactly. But you have to think on your own about that.
Yes.
So that being said, we want to thank you for coming along on this very long episode.
Oh, yeah, I'm so sorry.
Of talking about Book Tok and anti-intellectualism and just the state of reading, maybe? Maybe the reading state of the union? No, I don't think we're qualified enough.
Not qualified enough for that.
We're not qualified enough for that. Yeah, I don't know what this episode's going to be titled.
The state of the reading community.
The state of the... again, I still don't feel qualified to talk about that.
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. But of course, if you liked this episode, if you like what you've been listening to, please consider following the podcast and sharing the episode with your friends. It really would help us to grow the show, and we would appreciate the support those actions would give. And hey, if you just want to leave a review, that would be okay too. And then next time, we do know what we're talking about next time. We are talking about Poe, I believe.
Halloween episode.
It's a Halloween episode, and it's a little bit different from years past, but we'll explain that because
I needed to be able to create some chaos. I haven't done chaos in a while.
you haven't, and now she's taken over the whole month of October.
I have. I honestly have, and it's lovely.
So that being said, we'll see you guys next time then.
Bye.